Hi class, in these rough economic times, one way of getting a pulse on what's really going on is go out and talk to people. For example, I went out and talked to a seamstress. She told me things were so-so. On the other hand, if you talk to trash collectors, they say things are picking up. Anyway, let's get on to today. This week, you had a rough time on quiz 2. Class average, the undergraduates. You're waxing the grad students. Your average has been higher than theirs so far. Naturally, all your grades were curved up. The high scores for both sections were in the 90s, which tells me that this quiz was doable. And the handwritten one was kind of a curveball. It actually wasn't that hard, but it was time consuming. And for those of you 570 who are getting questions one at a time, you may not have paced yourself that well. Anyway, the lowest score gets dropped and you've still got another quiz to go. Now, PM4, we're into this idea of added value. Now, the thing about added value is the toughest thing about it is not to get confused and understand what each thing means. And there are basically only three elements. There's earned value, actual cost, and plan value. Okay, plan value means how much did I plan on spending at that point. So if I planned on spending $500,000 and I'm only 20% of the way through it, it means that I was planning after 20% of the way through this to only spend $100,000. That's it. Now, on the other hand, that spending might not be linear. If it doesn't tell you, then just assume it's linear. But in a lot of cases, it's not linear that you scale your spending. But somewhere they got to tell you where they plan that value. Now, earned value is when I complete a portion of this, how do I compare the two? And so an earned value is the value you got, percentage you got done, times what the entire budget is, and that's how much value you've earned. And actual costs are how much you've actually spent. And from these three values, you can get everything. Meaning you can get the CPI, you can get the SPI, you can get the BAC, and everything else. And so if we look at like this simple question, the actual cost of an activity is $200,000 and $100,000. The plan value of these activities, now that's actual cost, that's how much you actually spent. But the plan value was $180,000 and $80,000. Now, what does that tell you? Well, what that tells you, if the actual costs are higher than what you actually plan to spend, you're over budget. Okay, that you can figure out. A is 100% complete. B is only 75% complete. And so if it's 75% complete, then what's my earned value for activity B? And it's this 75% times what my plan value was, which was $80,000. You have to separate what actually happened and what you plan to happen. And 75% of $80,000 is $60,000. And from that, you can plug into the SPI and CPI equations. That's it. And then the question becomes, are you in trouble? Well, we know from a cost point of view, we're definitely in trouble. We'll see what happens with the schedule point of view. Now, this is just a more complicated problem than the one before, but still the same problem. And what does Dr. Cho always say? Maintain your discipline. What does cumulative budget mean? Cumulative budget means what's the total budget you've spent up to that date. So the first month, January, the cumulative budget is $8,400. February, the cumulative budget is $22,050. March, the cumulative budget is you add all these three together. April, you add these four together, so on and so forth. And so you would put this on a curve. The original budget was for $140,000. What is CPI and SPI for the project? Now keep in mind, CPI and SPI, you can calculate it for the entire project, or you can calculate it how that number is changing month after month. The original plan for spending was to be linear and for the project progress to be linear. And so here you would calculate CPI by month, and what do you conclude? Did you actually maintain that, or were there some months you were higher and some months you were lower? So for this, you have to calculate CPI for each and every month. Now the next question, you have all these numbers. They give you the EV, the PV, the AAC, the BAC. Now when they ask you for EAC, warning, think about which equation you want to use. And so EAC, if you have SPI and CPI, then you should use those two numbers. Because if you just use one versus the other, for example, I could be over budget but ahead of schedule. So what does that mean in terms of me finishing this project? Well, that's why the big longer equation is there. So you need to know why you use each of those equations at a certain point. And this one is just like all the other problems, it's a word problem. So it's pretty straightforward. However, if you have any questions or problems, please let me know. Now, PM5. Let me give you a warning about PM5. It can be time consuming. It's a simulation. You have to pay for it. Now, in the simulation, you get multiple chances. I think I give you 10 or 15 chances to take it. And what it comes down to is it's a real project. And you have two objectives, bringing it on time or bringing it on cost, or do both. And you get a certain amount of points. In general, if you do better than 700, it's an A-type grade. 600 is a B-type grade. Below that, 500 is more like a C-type grade. So that gives you a feeling for what you should shoot for. And so you have to basically go in and play with it and change the variables and see what gives you a better outcome. Next week I'll go into a little bit more detail, but those slides are already there for you. You can look at those and read those and see how this simulation is supposed to work. Good luck everyone, and let me know if you have any questions.